Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Championship Check-In podcast. We are live today for the first time in a long while. And here sit two men who cover the EFL, who finally reached an international break. Sense of relaxation is lovely. Sam, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Yeah, really good. Feels like there's been quite a few international breaks. Yeah, it's been stop-start, hasn't it? But then you get these saturated weeks where there's just so much football and your mind can't compute who's played who's in good form and what have you. But yeah, I was on League One duty Friday night, so I didn't do a live Championship game. That was good fun. Barnsley, Rotherham, like good derby, contrasting feeling, I think, between the two clubs at the moment. But Darryl Clark seems to have a pretty good thing going at Barnsley, so we could be talking about them certainly as being a potential Championship side next season. I think they look like a good bet for the playoffs at least.
Yeah, very much so. Get involved. We are live. So if you're listening after the fact, if ever we do this, make sure you're following me or Sam on Twitter and find out when we are going live. And you can have your say during the show. And you can also ask some questions towards the back end of the show. Obviously, we're in international break now, so no kind of preview thing. So Sam and myself will take your questions later in the show. Sam, 12 results for you, and then we'll go on to Parkin's pick. On Friday, it was Watford 1, Oxford 0. In the earlies on Saturday, Cardiff 1, Blackburn 3, Borough 5, Luton 1, ouch. Stoke 1, Millwall 1. 3 p.m.s went Derby 1, Plymouth 1, Leeds 2, QPR 0, Norwich 0, Bristol City 2, Pompey 3, Preston 1, Sunderland 2, Coventry 2. You will get to hear Sam's take on Mark Robins because we haven't spoken to him since that all went down. Sheffield United 1, Sheffield Wednesday 0. We're into the Sundays and the big Steel City derby there, Hull 1, West Brom 2. And to round it all out, a very, very late goal to give Burnley a 1-0 win over Swansea. Let's head to Parkin's pick. And Sam, we had 1 9-point week. I think there was only one last time when it was a 3-game week. And this time, Sheffield United, and they did it in real style because they won in the 98th minute in midweek. And they won the first they were the first winners of the Steel City derby in 7 years. What a week, Sam, for Sheffield United and their Parkin's pick.
Yeah, brilliant week for them. Brilliant couple of weeks, I think, to respond from the disappointment. I probably said this on the last podcast of those two kind of indifferent away performances in this fashion in what were, I think, a tricky run of games. So to come through that with maximum points, an incredible return. I think obviously it's built on a solid foundation. You can see that from the defensive statistics. Just I think 1 goal conceded in those 4 games at Bristol City when they came from behind to win. Nice to see the Harmer, O'Hare, Tyrese Campbell link up, I think, for the winning goal. Brilliant winning goal. Sheffield Wednesday obviously have that great structure. They're difficult to break down, so on and so forth. They're struggling going the other way at the moment in terms of making chances and ultimately taking them. I thought that Gassama and Saba gave them a little bit of impetus initially, but that soon subsided. Not a great deal between the teams. Sheffield United, in defensive areas, I think in the midfield looking really strong. 4 academy products getting big minutes for them this season, I think is a real plus. And I think on the face of it, that 11 that went to the field, I know Gilchrist went off at half time and they probably got a little bit more from Sariki at right back in terms of offensively. But I think you could argue a strong case that that's maybe the best 11.
Even without Big Kiefer?
Yeah, well, is horses for courses something that could fit here? Yeah, you might have to rotate there. I think Campbell's got the potential to be a great player. So we shall see on that front. I think maybe there's room for another one. They might try and refresh the the front options as the season evolves, but I think right now that's not far away from their best team. So yeah, it was not one for the purists, but the people that enjoy a derby. Plenty of tackles, plenty of effort, and ultimately probably a continuation, maybe, that Sheffield United just finding a way in the front areas rather than being, wonderfully creative and full of abundance of goals. They're finding enough to win games, and yeah, absolutely, Sheffield United are going to be there for the long haul in my mind.
When we have these teams, Sam, that are very good defensively and they've got sort of various star players, we look for it to kind of swing one or two ways, where either they start to become a bit more free flowing and they get even better, and well, they're right up at the top of the league, so there's not much headroom for that anyway. Or it can go the other way, doesn't it? Where maybe things run dry for a while. Is there any likelihood of either of those two things happening? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I think they should get better. I think, it's been obvious really that he's been trying to find the best combinations, and it will vary from game to game, of course, but I think it would help to have, like, O'Hare, for example, playing wide on the left-hand side for a period of games, and Raksaki getting a run on the right-hand side. So those combinations can have a little bit of time to grow. I think it is, it has been a little bit of an issue, but I think they're still creating chances, did enough to win this game. And I think in time they probably will become, a better attacking unit. But sometimes you don't need that. I think of Cardiff getting promoted under Warnock. I'm sure there's other examples of teams who haven't been heavily reliant on one or two players. So I think sharing the goals around is something that is becoming more prevalent in the modern game, and we've got examples of teams that have got themselves promoted not being reliant on one source. So as long as the teams functioning defensively and the midfield are as good as they are currently, Sheffield United probably won't need to do too much more in the attacking departments to be around automatic promotion. No.
So Sheffield United are the best team in the league in terms of points per game. Obviously, when you factor in the points deduction, they are not top of the league. That would be Sunderland. I'm not entirely sure how to frame this now, Sam, because obviously they're like 8 undefeated and they've gone undefeated through the week. It just would have been, we would be huge thumbs up here if they'd held on to that 2-0 lead against Coventry and they'd, clean sheet both of the away games. 2-0 win over Coventry. 2 beautiful goals by Sirkin and Isidore. So I'm struggling to frame it. And I mean, we even said, though, last week, Sam, what's the point building yourself up a gap at the top of the table? You've got to use it when you have tricky weeks and stuff, haven't you? And then go again. So I guess you're still impressed with Sunderland?
Yeah, it was a flat second half performance, wasn't it? I think that was clear, albeit I think at 2-1 there was a 3v2, 2v1, where if the pass would have been executed better, the final pass, I can't recall who it was, Connolly probably makes it 3-1, and that's the game. So I think they probably had, chances to cement the victory. I think it's more about Coventry's response, isn't it? And they need enormous credit for their spirited comeback. But I think for Sunderland, maybe it's just a product of the absence of Bellingham, Patterson. They've now got an issue. I think Robertson, Humer are suspended. There's question marks over Mundell's fitness. So I just think all of a sudden, Regis Lebris had an opportunity to play quite a consistent team start of the season, and that was one of their strengths. And maybe with the games coming thick and fast now and people inevitably picking up injuries and suspension, that's just affected them somewhat. But I think it's probably more about Coventry here. Just quickly again on Sunderland, if you take out, one of the best players in the division on current form in Bellingham, then that's going to have an impact on any team. So they've been impacted by that, no doubt. But yeah, Coventry came back to to obviously get a share of the spoils, which is brilliant for their supporters in a game which I know has become quite a big fixture for both sets of supporters. A little bit of a rivalry that's developed, and Sunderland have got a poor record in this game, so there would have been a sense of inevitability a little bit, I think, in the stadium that this is what Coventry do when they're matched up, and also it's all been going rather rosily for the Sunderland support this season. So maybe it was a little bit of a flashback to some more desperate times. But yeah, I wouldn't be racing to say that Sunderland have hit a brick wall. I think it's more, Coventry were resolute and stuck in there, and these games can happen in football. It was probably one where if it goes to 3-1, the points were secure.
I've got to talk about Leeds and Burnley. Do you want to talk about Mark Robins now, or should we do that in a little bit?
We can do that now, I think.
So, obviously, Sam and I were literally filming the show on Thursday, and we came off, and I'm sure both of us switched our phones on, and bam, 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 bam. So we didn't get to talk to Sam about it. I put a quick reaction out, Sam, and the responses interested me because I think the question to you is this thing of loyalty and credit in the bank versus the kind of brutal decision. Because a lot of people were unhappy with Robins being sacked, but the basic argument I was getting from 99% of them was he's proven over a long period he's a brilliant manager for them. Even if it's not great at the moment, he'll get it right if he's given another, 10, 12, 14 months or whatever. Do you buy that argument?
I didn't. And then I went to the Luton game a few weeks ago and I saw, still a pretty vibrant team, really good movement, a team that was playing for the manager. I think that's another ingredient that has got to be said. I thought that this season, and I'll come on to the reasons why, but I thought this season looked really tricky for Mark Robins. And I've not seen too many people say, but let's flash back to a few weeks ago when they lost at Preston. There was a lot of criticism for the manager there. And I'm not saying that Coventry supporters wanted him out, but I think it was the first time. And having been at Coventry the other day and speaking to a lot of people around the place, this season has not been good. I think they've turned up maybe for one home game prior to that Luton game in terms of a performance across 90 minutes. So it's not been good. There has been criticism, and Mark Robins will have been aware of that, but still a huge shock for him to lose his job. Having seen that game against Luton, I would probably suggest that, the problems aren't enormous and the quality of the squad would have risen. And from here on in, that they would have improved their league position. I don't think a season where they're going to be challenging. I think they're short of the top clubs and probably the top six. However, I think it's clear that the owner wants a head coach or whatever that is these days. And I don't think Mark Robins is that. No. So I think that's the problem. The Coventry supporters, and I would agree with this, I don't think the blueprint is broken currently. I think they've had so much change at the club, and that starts with the players that have departed, the experienced guys that have been a really good spine for the team over the years. People like Godden, McFadden, Kelly. Adding to that, two integral coaches, Adi Vivash and Dennis Lawrence, leaving over the last 6 months. Vivash just shortly before the start of pre-season. Listen, if you are part of a team who are used to being coached and hearing the same voices on the training ground, and all of a sudden they depart, that's a big change. Remember Manchester United under Fergie? He used to replenish that area, didn't he, every few seasons if it went flat. And he was someone that was very much, away from the training ground, in the office, would come out to oversee. That was Mark Robins's job. Okay, hand in hand with more training ground coaches that he allowed to get on with the tactical side of it. That's a big change. So they brought in 3 new coaches. Reece Carr, I think was his name, that took charge at the weekend with George Boateng, who everyone will remember, and Mark Delaney. 3 coaches that have come in, different ideas, trying to, influence the players in different ways, different styles of play. Coventry under Robbins, Vivash, Dennis Lawrence, incredibly successful the last few years. So they've also departed. There's been huge change there. So maybe that dynamic's not been as good at the moment. And then you add in the better players that have been sold over the last few seasons as well. Gyökeres, O'Hare, Harmer, the Casey Palmer, the creative sparks, the real talent that have gone. And in fairness, there's been some decent players brought in, but I had a quick look on Saturday before I did something for 5 Live. I think 6, maybe 7 signings, 25 or under. I think Thomas Asante at 25 is the oldest. So they've lost a hell of a lot of experience and guaranteed championship quality and replaced it with potential. So I think there's a sea change going on there. And I think it's Dean Austin that's heads up some of the recruitment. So I think there's a change going on in terms of like what the club wants to be in terms of the structure, and probably Mark Robbins in the owner's mind doesn't fit into that. And it's probably all these people departing was maybe leading to this over a period of time. And now because of the 9th place finish last year, not getting in the playoffs, in different start to this season, the owner's gone with it and obviously face an enormous backlash. And we're going to learn more tonight because I think 6 o'clock, I think he's live on the wireless doing a fans forum. So there could be, watch this space, there could be an announcement tonight, or there could at least be a little bit of clarity. But I hope that what I've just said there, I've hit the mark in some areas, because obviously I've seen them this year. So I know a few of the people around the club. And I think it's a combination of factors.
So it came up in the chat there from Dave. The big link is Frank Lampard today, which would be your head coach guy. I know you and I both rail against this derangement syndrome that people seem to have against Gerrard and Lampard and Rooney, these very famous ex-players. They seem to be very kind of sort of derided. I think Frank Lampard at Championship level is a decent enough manager, but it's a horrible one to go into, given what the fan base is thinking at the moment. But you could see Lampard going in there, couldn't you? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, he's been linked with Roma as well, hasn't he, in the last couple of weeks?
That's an interesting pair.
Which I've heard that is possibly down to the last few for that job. If you take the Mark Robbins situation out of the way, or put it aside for a moment, let's say there was another manager that went in and did 6 months now before Lampard. I think it's a really good landing spot for Lampard. I think he's going to right now probably struggle to get back into the Premier League, maybe. So in terms of a club with great potential, great history, it would be, I think, he may need some encouragement and may need some time to maybe get his head around it, to drop into the lower half of the Championship as it is at the moment, to rebuild once more. But I think, when the dust settles, and I know there's loads of anger, rightly so, at the moment, but I think once the dust settles, the fans would probably embrace it. When you consider what he did for Derby, making them competitive in that season that he was there. I know he had brilliant loanees, but I wouldn't say that there's a vast difference between the quality maybe there was at Derby that season and what he'd be inheriting at Coventry. So,
and Sam, shouldn't be forgotten, that was a mighty stacked Championship season as well. That was a hard season to win in as well. Yeah,
quite possibly. So, I think it would probably be met with approval, is my gut feeling. Obviously, I'm quite au fait with some of his backroom staff that would potentially go as well. Obviously, with that Chelsea link, good people, hard working, and someone like some of his backroom staff have picked up good roles while they've been away from first team gigs. So, I would think in time it would probably be a decent appointment, but obviously, I think you could appoint Jurgen Klopp there today, and it might get met with a few disenchanted supporters because of the last week.
Yeah, very much so. Sorry, I sent Sam off on a tangent there. We were supposed to talk about Leeds and Burnley in this segment, so we'll do it really quickly. Leeds still keeping pace, Sam. I'm hearing a bit from the Leeds fans I've been chatted to and the ones commenting on the channel. I don't know, whether a little bit indifferent from them. I think they want to see a big win or a big run from something, because they're kind of toddling along. They're just under 2 points per game, and they're winning all the home games. And the last two wins have been against QPR and against Plymouth. And as much as I don't want to disrespect those clubs, that's not going to get the kind of Leeds pulses racing, if you understand my point of view. But they are winning and they are moving along pretty nicely. I think they're 4 without a win away from home, though, Sam. So maybe I don't know. It feels very in the middle with Leeds at the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty run of the mill, wasn't it? I think I don't know why it's not as entertaining maybe as you would have, envisaged at Ellen Road against Championship opposition. I think, maybe there's a little bit of a lack of individuals that are really sparkling.
Rutter and Somerville were thrilling players, weren't they, last season? Yeah,
it could be that. I know Nonto had a terrific start to the season, but maybe not been at that heights. Ramazani looked like he was going to be a really good acquisition. I think there's probably that. Yeah, you're probably onto something there. I think Piru, obviously, we know he's a brilliant 18-yard box player, but he's not that easy on the eye, is he? And he doesn't contribute loads. I think Joseph's a little bit more all action. I don't know if at some point they could maybe get them both in the team together, but obviously they seem to be liking Aronson in the 10, and Pirro was the finisher here, wasn't he? If you like, coming on after Joseph's probably tired out the QPR back line, and Pirro gets his goal. So I don't know, maybe it's just that clinical element sometimes is just going amiss, especially away from home. I did a little bit of a look back over last season a few days ago, and I think there was 8 maybe away defeats last season. I think 6 by 6 or 7 or 8, I think 7 or 8, and I think 6 by the odd goal. So this wasn't, that defeat at Millwall was not something that was new to the Leeds fans. I think they suffered in that type of game last season quite frequently, where they had to play against a team that had loads of bodies behind the ball. And I think the sense is that Daniel Farke just lacks a little bit of a plan B, or I hate that terminology. Sorry for saying that.
I know what you mean, though.
Lacks maybe the tactical acumen of maybe some of the other managers that they've had, or some of the other managers that have been in the Championship the last few seasons. And we probably saw that, didn't we, in the playoff final against Southampton. Sometimes it feels a little bit like we've got good players, forward players in particular, go and create carnage and win us the game. So maybe it's a bit of a product of that, but QPR are desperately bad at the moment, but I don't think they probably will be in a couple of months. That's my feeling, if they stick with the manager and get some players back. So still a good victory, because it can be dangerous, as Burnley saw the other day, as Sunderland saw, playing against QPR, who are terribly struggling for goals, but defensively can get it right from time to time.
Yeah, very much so. And just to round this out, Sam, at the top of the table, Burnley won, as I said, very late on, 1-0 win against Swansea. They've been struggling a bit, Burnley, after you called it at the time, didn't you? You said that hot start was great, but pretty unsustainable looking at the numbers, wasn't it? And the goals are completely dried up, as you predicted, actually. First goal in 4, actually, and they desperately needed that. From what I saw of the stats, they were good value for it. They were knocking on the door. But Sam, when it goes to a 94th minute penalty, that you're kind of in the lap of the gods there. But much needed win for Burnley. But they don't look as convincing to me, Sam, as Sunderland, Leeds, and Sheffield United. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, totally. I mean, defensively, they're as good as, aren't they? If not better.
True.
They're giving up any goals. There was a few half chances for Swansea in this game. I think Burnley edged the chances. Koleosho looked relatively bright. I think it's similar to Sheffield United. There's not really that, configuration of the front line consistently, and you don't really know where everyone's going to play. The balance isn't perfect. They're clearly missing Foster. Fleming played down the middle. I think Fleming's a great number 10. I don't think he's a central striker, so that's a little bit problematic. But they got the job done, and I've not done too much reading on this, I'm afraid, and I've not seen it from too many angles. It looks like a really fortunate penalty. I mean, I've not read Luke Williams's comments, but it looked like, one that would go 50-50. Some weeks you're not going to get it. So they got a little bit fortuitous. Rodriguez sticks it away well, and they're still there. That's the thing. And they're still there, and they're winning games, and they're not conceding, and they should get better. So, or if they don't even get better, Scott Parker will find a way, I think, to have them in the mix.
If you hadn't just said his name, Sam, and I just had those comments, I would have been able to tell you which manager you were talking about. Oh, they're still there, and it's not quite convincing, but they're still there. We've had this before so many times with Parker, haven't we?
Yeah, we have, and I wouldn't be critical. There may become a time in the season, or there'll be games where they're frustrated that they're not a little bit more free scoring, or there's not more flair. But you're winning games. That's the most important thing. I think, to get the job done. If you're looking at it, and I know football's about entertainment and all that, and people will always throw that back in your face. But I think Burnley, having had such a prolonged period in the Premier League, it would be incredible for them to bounce back at the first time of asking. Yeah,
I'll just make one comment and then we'll move on to the next bit. At both Fulham and Bournemouth, he was a hot starter, Parker. I remember at Fulham, him and Bielsa were miles clear by Christmas, and they, kind of saw it through in the playoffs. And at Bournemouth, they stank a bit in the second half of the season. It looked like Nottingham Forest were going to catch them, and he still kind of got over the line. But there you go. Keep your brilliant comments coming in the chat. My machine has been a bit temperamental here, so I'll click on them very, very slowly because I don't want it to do anything weird to the stream. Sam, we'll talk about the playoffs in a second, but big win for Portsmouth down at the bottom of the table, and a big return for Colby Bishop. Pompey off the bottom after the QPR defeat as well. They're 12 points from 15, so it's completely not a desirable total. They're not near the point per game yet, but I feel some kind of confidence here. You've spoken about them growing into the season. You've spoken about players returning. Bishop obviously is a key one when it's the goal scorer. What a great win for Pompey.
Amazing win. Yeah, and it seemed pretty convincing. I'm not sure the Portsmouth fans would probably have gone along with that when it went to 2-1 in the second half. I think that's the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's the first time they probably had the 2-goal advantage in any game this season. At Leeds opening day, did they go 2 up at Leeds?
Everyone went up by 2, Sam, did they?
No,
you might well be right.
And they got, obviously, that was a pretty fortunate point on the opening day. So there would have been nerves, I think, around Fratton Park. I mean, come on to Colby Bishop in a minute, but I mean, to see Marlon Pack at centre half, I think shows you the difficulties they've had so far this season with selection, but also with form. McIntyre was on the bench here, so I think Marlon Pack also, can come in and do that job because of his football knowledge, but having the experience on the pitch as well, having his leadership, quality in a game which they had to win really before the international break, given the last few weeks. That was a massive game for them. And I thought I saw, a much more vibrant team. I think in Matt Ritchie, same sentiment that I just remarked on in regard to Marlon Pack, but his form's getting better as well. Murphy's starting to look like the player we anticipated him becoming. Brilliant goal that he scored. So loads to like about that performance. But of course, and obviously, I've got friends at the club, and I knew that Colby Bishop was getting on really well. So not a complete surprise to me, but obviously they're going to have to be careful, and they would have been being careful last few weeks.
That's perfect, Sam. 12 minutes and then an international break. That's a perfect drip back in, isn't it?
Yeah, but he's just been such a big miss for them. I think Shaughnessy at the other end's been an enormous miss as well, because him and Paul, I mean, Paul's making a few errors now. We didn't see that at all last season, Regan Paul. He was incredible, the two of them. So I'm not sure the script with Shaughnessy, but if they could get him back at some stage as well, this season looks a hell of a lot brighter. But yeah, Bishop, I'm a massive fan of his. I have been since his League One days at Aki. I think he's a terrific goal scorer, but he looks like a really good character as well. Excellent hold-up player. And yeah, it's a real scare when you hear anything like that with anyone in life, but professional sportsmen. Obviously, normally it's very difficult for them to resume careers. So it's great that he's someone that has identified an issue, and it's something that he can play with, and he's recovered from whatever surgery or whatever the procedure was, and he can get back going because he's still a young man and still got plenty of football ahead of him. And for Portsmouth, he's vital, absolutely vital, and he'll be delighted, as will the players and staff be, that they got the main man back.
Absolutely. We'll work our way up into the playoffs, Sam, because I want to talk about Middlesbrough, and I want to talk about Rob Edwards and that interview again after the game. But can I just touch on two sides that had good wins that are kind of just outside the playoffs, and that's Bristol City and Blackburn. Bristol City went to Norwich, who have put up a 0-point week, strangely, when we were so excited about them at the start of October. But Bristol City are very, very hard to beat. And as I triggered a few Bristol City fans, Sam, by suggesting it was a bit stoic, and asked the question without making the accusation, is it a bit dull? But they're very, very methodical, and it's very much working. Blackburn, though, just feels a little bit like a reset after a poor run. Who are you more excited about in terms of Bristol City and Blackburn in the chase?
Difficult question. I think I've been continually burnt by being overly optimistic about Bristol City over the years.
Yeah. They're like Stoke, aren't they?
Yeah, I shouldn't say it being an ex-Swindon player, but I secretly do admire Bristol City. I admired them when I used to play against them. They had a great side, League One team with Brian Tinnion and Scott Murray and the like. And since they've done the new stadium up, I think, hopefully, all the cities that have had Premier League football and towns in recent times, it would be good to have a Premier League team in Bristol finally. I think it's a very modern new way of playing, probably very new ideas that Liam Manning brings to the party, and you're probably alluding to that there. A great time to play Norwich, I think, given all their issues. So having four probably of their most influential players missing at one time, that's going to hurt any team in the division. And Bristol City have shown over the last few years very capable of doing that. I think Mehmeti's becoming more of a consistent performer, goal threat, someone with an abundance of ability, but maybe hasn't won enough points for Bristol City since he's been there as he maybe should have done. And Naki Wells is always such a good guaranteer of goals and a brilliant finish for him. I would feel that for them to make that step and be a team that you can really fancy to be in the playoffs, I would think that the forward area is where I'd question whether they're going to be good enough. That's my hunch, and probably, that's probably continually been my kind of stance on Bristol City. I just think they maybe could do with one or two more options in the forward positions.
Yeah, maybe feeling the loss of Conway. But as I said on the Hot Takes video I did yesterday, they've lost 1 in 10, and that was in the 98th minute with 10 men against Sheffield United. So it's not a bad trick. I take your point that if you want to go top 4, you need goals. But you can be hard to beat and get in the playoffs, and you can be hard to beat and win the playoffs, can't you? So we will very much keep an eye on them. We'll skirt over Blackburn a little bit, but great win, and we've been lauding Cardiff recently. And Todd Cantwell and Lewis Travis look like they might be knocking something together there, sort of creatively. So we'll keep an eye on Blackburn and see if John Eustace can pull something else out of his hat there. Watford, I think we bigged up enough on Thursday after the 6-2 as well at the weekend. I want to talk to you about Middlesbrough Luton, Sam. And there's obviously two angles here, because I thought Middlesbrough were brilliant. You like to use the word clinical. Some of the goals in that game were absolutely superb. And when you see 5 goals rattled in with the kind of numbers alongside it, just absolutely superb. Doak looks really good. The Liverpool lad, Azaz, Latte Lath, all kind of delivered. It's the second time in a few weeks I'm going to compare a Latte Lath goal to Ian Wright as well, which is no bad thing when you're a striker. And then there's the Luton angle, because I said, Sam, Rob Edwards looked stressed, and I don't want to say unwell, but he had sort of a very tired, not nice demeanour to see about him. And he didn't have that in the interview post-game. He looked like he was almost just saying, look, you know, if they sack me now, they sack me, which would be kind of not great. But what do you want to touch on? Do you want to talk about Middlesbrough being excellent, or Rob Edwards, and is he going to survive this international break?
Yeah, well, I think Luton's the story, really, isn't it? But yeah, credit Middlesbrough, obviously far and away the better side at QPR in the week. I wasn't waxing lyrical about them because I thought QPR were wretched on the night, especially in the first half. So I probably was a bit more balanced about Middlesbrough after that one. But yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the team now, and Bergzog obviously came in and scored. I thought McGree, such a vital cog for them. Don't you? Yeah, I just think the way they set up, he's really important coming in off the left hand side. So it was interesting that Bergzog played wide left, but it looks like Ayling played at fullback on the left hand side. So maybe just a slightly different balance, because you're not going to get loads from Luke Ayling going forward. Midfield 3, brilliant. Morris, Hackney, Azaz, 2 wonderful goals. He's looking like an incredible pickup for them to go and get him so quickly after one season maybe in the Championship with Argyle. I don't even know if it was
half a season, yeah,
half a season. And Ben Doak is terrific. He was the best player at QPR. Just, when there's two teams maybe cancelling each other out to a degree, he's someone that will just go 1v1 and just get at his fullback. And he's very, very sharp, very, very quick, short or large distances. So he's going to cause absolute havoc. I say about Middlesbrough, the triangle at the back, Dieng, Edmondson and Clark. Well, you'll know Edmondson. They're not. I think Clark's a good footballer, but they didn't look perfect playing out at QPR. And, they've got real talented midfielders. So when they can get it in there, they're really adept at keeping it. And there's nice patterns. And you can see that they're really well coached. But I just think it's not a team that's got, really, really comfortable goalkeeper and really comfortable centre halves on the ball. So, yeah, maybe it's not as fluid as maybe I anticipated under Michael Carrick. But yeah, I mean, scoring goals, Latte Lath, I think, was always going to be up there, wasn't he? He didn't start the season in brilliant form. Middlesbrough were making like masses of chances, and all of a sudden they're flying in, and he looks again the real deal, which he looked the tail end of last season. So yeah, anything but playoffs, would you say, for Middlesbrough would probably be a disappointment this season, given the way they're going. And Luton, yeah, I mean, they've improved the performances, second half at Coventry and this game apart, but they've not been able to take many points. I think is it 7 points from 18? And
nobody's lost more games, Sam.
Really?
In the entire division.
I did not know that.
More games than Luton, yeah.
And if you think, the Watford game looked like a turning point, felt like a turning point, because it was after that last international break, or one of the international breaks, when they'd had a chance to reset and have a look at one or two things, and they played very much like the Luton that got promoted a couple of seasons ago. So I think everyone felt this was a turning point for them. But to only take 7 points, I think it is, in that time, in the last 6 games, is of course a disappointment. I thought they were pretty good on Wednesday against Cardiff. I watched the game live. I worked on the game. I thought they were better in every department, and I thought 1-0 flattered Cardiff. So for them to go to Middlesbrough and receive a bit of a hiding was a shock for me, and just shows that everything's not right. And I can't exactly put my finger on it. I've tried to account for players' heads not being fully on the job because of the Premier League season, mental fatigue, maybe players that had speculation about their futures in the summer. I've spoken a lot at length about Rob Edwards maybe just trying to change one or two things in terms of the playing style early part of the season, and that not going to plan, and now that being ripped up and reverting to what Luton were in previous seasons and under their previous guys. And I think these are all factors, and I think, yeah, you don't want to get into a conversation about Rob Edwards' demeanour or his appearance and stuff like that, but I think it is hard going.
I didn't mean that with any disrespect, Sam.
No, I think everyone's talking about it.
I was genuinely worried about him when
I think everyone's noticed that he's a bit flat. I think that's a conversation that a lot of people are having, but I think it's just tough that he's getting a little bit of stick. It's tough that he's not getting the results. There's a bit of a cloud over the club at the moment in terms of their start to the season. That's all it is. And I think the expectations has just changed so much. And the reality is it's so difficult, I think, the Championship. And, Luton haven't got a team that I look at and think that there's enough quality there to blow away the division. And maybe they do have to look at one or two other ways of hurting opposition or setting up or tactically. And that's everything that the coaching staff will be wrestling with over the next fortnight. My sentiment is I really hope that he stays on. That's my feeling and my hope. I hope he stays on, and I hope he gets a crack to have a rethink and to maybe change the lineup and change one or two things, and they get it right. That's my hope, because I think Luton, their way of doing things has been pretty consistent over the last few years. They are loyal. They do look at the bigger picture. It is about, building a new stadium, improving the training ground, bringing through young players, all the things that supporters crave. And I think Rob Edwards has been a big part of that with Gary Sweet and the consortium and the people that have owned Luton over the last decade after a horrific time. So, yeah, that's my sentiment. But the reality is, if the results get too bad, then, of course, the pressure will grow and the inevitable will happen. So, yeah, big 3 or 4 games for them.
Yeah, we'll keep our eyes on that. Before we go to the quiz and the questions, Sam, you did have a shout for a meltdown moment this week in the game between Stoke and Millwall.
Sorry, yes. The Jake Cooper tug on, I don't know who it was. Sorry, I've only briefly.
Tell us in the chat.
I briefly saw it on Saturday night, and then I watched it again today. And apologies if there's an offside flag up or a handball or something, but it looks like the most blatant of tugs that you'll ever wish to see. So, or not wish to see if you're a Stoke fan in the aftermath of that not being given. It was Berger?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, incredible scenes. But, just an unbelievable run that Millwall are on currently, isn't it? And it's a surprise that they didn't win this game 1-0, considering they'd done it in pretty much every game this season. So, yeah, another fine result. I'm sure Neil would have taken the point up there. But Stoke, on that evidence, very, very unlucky.
He's trying to do the real sneaky little hide the tug back. It just doesn't. Because the other thing as well, Sam, is this red card as well, isn't it? It's a clear denial of an obvious goal scoring opportunity with the Berger 2 yards from goal. But hey, you win some, you lose some, don't you? Right. Get your questions in, or hold on a minute and we'll go to questions in for Sam. We'll just go to Fev's quiz. I think Fev's in the chat actually. Give him a follow over on Twitter.
He just told me about some differences on the chat in Bristol City's makeup in the last couple of games, which I'll be interested to take a look at. Yeah, but no, my point wasn't probably about them being over elaborate in possession or what have you, just maybe the methods under Liam Manning. They will be, I'm sure, a very well coached team, irrelevant of which way they're approaching it.
Get your questions in for me and Sam to close out the show. If we haven't mentioned a team yet, we'll try and prioritise those teams that haven't been mentioned yet in the show. Sam, this is my question for you. Of the Championship players with 3 or more assists this season, which 6 players create the most chances per minute played? So basically, who are the most creative players in the Championship? And that's how he's measuring it.
He likes working me hard, doesn't he? Jesus. Yes. So I'm looking for the most creative players in the Championship.
The most creative players in the Championship, basically. And I'm going to give you a clue. We have mentioned all bar 2 of these on the show already.
No. Okay. First one that comes to mind is Finn Azaz.
Yes, who creates 2.99 chances per 90.
Sainz?
No, but it's a good shout. You'd think he would be in there.
Oh, man. I'm rubbish at these. Right, let's go straight to the top of the table. I'm allowed to look at the table, aren't I?
Of course you are.
Who's more creative out of those two? Nonto?
Nonto is not there. Do I give you one more clue? You're 1 for 3.
Give me one more clue, yeah.
Go back to the Luton Middlesbrough game.
What, have I mentioned him?
Yeah.
Doak.
Doak is in there. That is 2 for 4. And in fact, that's your 4 guesses, isn't it? Would you believe there's 3 Middlesbrough players in there?
Who's your other?
Riley McGree was who.
Oh, is he? I wouldn't have thought that.
I wouldn't have thought that. There's a QPR player in there, Sam.
QPR player in there.
Dembele.
Oh, I wouldn't have got that. No, I wouldn't have got that. He missed the last few.
Alfie Doughty, who takes.
I would have got Doughty. Yeah, Doughty would have been my next one. Yeah.
Every free kick. Keep your questions coming in for me and Sam. I'll take my question from Fev.
Okay, mate. Of the Championship players with 4 or more goals this season, which 4 have scored the most? Which 6 have scored the most goals per 90?
Goals per 90. I'm going to look at the table. I promise I'm not looking at any other stats. Do you know what? I reckon the lad for Blackburn who scored really quick, Ohashi.
He's not there.
No? Oh, God. Who scores quickly and off the bench and whatnot? Goals per minute.
I think only 4 have been mentioned on today's pod.
Crikey.
We should get one.
Emmanuel Latte-Lath.
Not there.
Oh, for God's sake, Sam. Naki Wells.
Correct.
Thank God. Mentioned on today's pod. Josh Madger, surely.
Yeah, he's the best, Josh Madger. So he's every 66 minutes. Wells every 86.
Borja Sainz.
Correct.
And I think that's might even be my 5th guess. Fev, there you go. He's given us the scores
2-2.
down there. Yeah, read out.
Your ones you were missing, mate, were Piru, every 80.
Yeah, and he's been off the bench as well, hasn't he?
Conway, 5 goals, 71, and Robinson at Cardiff, obviously the only fella who's notching for them, isn't he? 5 for him, every 69. There
we go. Right, let's take some questions from the chat. There you go. Aaron's doing a good job there. Stick a Q before it so I can see what's coming. We'll round out the podcast with some questions. Thank you as ever to Fev, who is in the chat. You can say thank you to him to his face there, as we are doing here. Josh, name a better enforcer in the Championship era. I was going to say
era, blimey.
Championship. I mean, Vinny Souza, every time I've done Sheffield United on a watch along, looks like he's way too good for the Championship. But someone will tell me in the chat, I assume he was signed very expensively, was he, in the Premier League, and is a Premier League player playing in the Championship. But he's very, very good indeed. God, Sam, in the Championship era, enforcers, get him in. Give me some Glenn Whelan for some classic Championship enforcers.
Enforcers in the Championship. Well, let's think of some of the best teams. Sean Derry. There you go. Sean Derry for QPR. What I really enjoyed not an enforcer so much, but I like the Fulham three of Kearney, Johansson and McDonald, right? Kevin McDonald. Kevin McDonald was probably the most enforcery of that trio. Who else have we had? Can't think of we always talk about the Wolves team. Who would have been sitting in that Wolves team?
Oh God, the stupid expensive Portuguese lad who plays in Saudi now, whose name I'm
Neves.
forgetting. Neves, yeah.
No, not an enforcer, but yeah.
Sat in there taking the Michael, wasn't he?
Yeah. All right, I'll give you Derry and I'll give you the Fulham three.
No, Sean Derry's a good shout. Aaron, what are your thoughts on the three promoted teams to the Championship? As an Argyle fan, I was hoping Oxford would have similar form to Rotherham last season, but they've really impressed me.
Yeah, no, I think really impressive. I'm not seeing loads of Derby in the flesh. I'll come clean there. So I am doing them in a few weeks' time. So I'll be watching the games and the footage. So maybe we could have a Derby chat in the weeks to come. But yeah, they've been competitive, haven't they? Really competitive, especially at home. And obviously got that maiden away win at Coventry the other day. So they're looking like they've got a chance, haven't they? Absolutely. And Oxford, I think Des Buckingham, again, looks like a really good tactical coach. Made changes in the last couple of games, were competitive at Watford the other night, really rallied late on. And do you know what surprised me about them? I think it's the amount of players that have shown that they're comfortable taking the ball and playing at times really good football. Whereas, in the League One promotion season, latterly they were playing quite counter-attack and, absorbing pressure and then breaking. I think they've shown this season, and some lads that maybe I didn't envisage stepping up for them, looking really capable. And I think that's the coach giving them the license and giving them the confidence to be able to go and do that. So I think they've got a really good manager. Oxford got a chance, and Portsmouth we've done already today. Really, it's going to be hard, really hard. I think the squad is light, but they need to make sure they're in a position in January to convince probably the people in charge of the signings to roll the dice a little bit, and that's hand in hand with having Colby Bishop, Shaughnessy available. They're better players because they've been really hindered by injury and hindered by a hellish fixture list at the start of the season. So you'd give all three a fighting chance, wouldn't you? There's certainly teams in worse nick right now who weren't promoted last season. Well,
yeah, let's go on to this next one. Bazzi, are Preston in big trouble, Sam? My immediate thought was, well, no, because Preston are never they're going to be eternally in the Championship. But then as I was listening to your answer about Derby and Oxford, looking decent, and, can Pompey come good? Well, someone's got to be in the bottom three. And you think QPR, Cardiff, Hull, there's trends up. Coventry are in the blooming bottom 8, aren't they? So I don't know. Are Preston in trouble, Sam?
Yeah, well, I think I think I tipped them to win at the weekend, didn't I? It's a pretty alarming defeat. And I think Paul Heckingbottom, his quote was they were bullied all over the pitch or something like that, which you wouldn't associate with them, really. It's been a few weeks since I've seen them live. Obviously, the Norwich game was the last time and they got a point, and I wasn't impressed. I wasn't impressed, really. I still thought it was a team that was kind of overly reliant on that consistent back line that they've had. Not performing miracles for them, but I think they lacked a little bit of invention.
Sturdy, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they lacked a little bit of invention, a little bit of creativity. The handbrake's still on to a degree, and maybe that's because they don't have, a squad as Paul Heckingbottom will want it to look like in a few months or even longer than that. So I wouldn't write them off totally now, because I have faith in him as a manager in the Championship, absolutely. And I thought that it would be a season that would turn around for them, and the early noises were that was absolutely what was happening, that they returned to their defensive best and they had that more oomph going forward. And I think that's what they crave, isn't it? The North End supporters, they want to be entertained, and they didn't feel they were getting the bang for their buck under Ryan Lowe latterly. So we shall see. But it's a big couple of games coming up for them, isn't it? Derby County and then away to Stoke, home to West Brom. Not the worst fixtures, but they need to start showing that improvement. So maybe a manager and a squad that will benefit from a little break from the Championship rigours now. My hunch, I don't think they're massively in trouble.
I don't know.
Ask me again, maybe in January. Let's get Christmas out of the way and we'll have this conversation again. Yeah. But right now, I'd say I'd have trust that the manager will get a tune out of them.
And like I was saying, you've got to factor in what else is going on down the bottom, because you can just be unlucky and get dragged into it in a kind of high tide, can't you? Sam, on QPR here, 3-part question. Does Cifuentes stay? Does Sella come good? Do Rangers stay up?
I'd say yes, no, yes.
So Cifuentes to stay. You don't fancy Sella to come good, and Rangers eventually will stay up, yeah?
Yeah, I'm. Listen, I was taken aback by how bad they were against Middlesbrough, and there was that second half rally, and actually, Salah looked a bit brighter in the second half. He missed a couple of opportunities, but he did well. He got across the front once, and he had another decent effort. So I was like, oh, hello. But I don't know exactly how you're going to get the best out of him. I don't think you can maybe set up a team just to... Do you know what it felt like watching it? It was like Soldado at Tottenham. That was his name, wasn't it? You could tell he was a good player. You could tell technically he was efficient, but he didn't have that change of pace. He doesn't have much strength. So the ball's coming back quite a lot. He's not aerially dominant. So I think you have to cut balls back for him, probably let him do his best work in the 18-yard box. It doesn't really get too heavily involved in the build-up. So I don't know how to get the best out of him, really. I think having Chair fit and having Dembele back would obviously help if they can kind of mirror what they did previously. Chair at Rangers and Dembele elsewhere. He's been the one signing that did look bright at the start of the season. I'm just hanging on to the fact that Cifuentes was excellent last season. The team looked really well coached. They looked really confident. Again, like I was just talking about with Middlesbrough. No, it wasn't Middlesbrough, was it? With Oxford, players that all of a sudden under a new manager that's given them the license and the confidence looked like they could play and had a bit of a swagger. They need to recapture that, because at the moment, the patterns to me are just not evident. They're looking like it is a player getting on the ball with a bit of time, and they don't know instantly where the next pass, where they've been coached to instigate patterns of play and attacks. They don't know where that pass has got to go, and there's a lack of options and a lack of movement, and that stinks of a lack of confidence as well. So I don't know how that turns around. I think it helps when you have your best players available. So that's all you can hope for at the moment. Sam Field's playing as part of the back line, midfield player. No Colback. No Frey, Chair injured again the other day when I was there. No Dembele. I could go on. Clark Salter's been missing. So I think if all of them become available again, then if the results don't come, it's big trouble. But until then, I'll have to stay tight-lipped.
There you go. Brilliant stuff, Sam, and brilliant stuff from everybody in the chat. We are up the hour for the Championship Check-In podcast. It's been a joy doing it live again. Sam and I have been having to kind of pre-record a lot of the shows, but we will, where possible, come on and do it live. And it's great to be in the chat with everybody in real time as well. If you're listening after the fact, do check the socials to see that. And we will be back next Monday. Let us know what you want us to do. We might even revisit our team of the season so far from the last international break and see who could come in, who could come out. But get your suggestions in via the comments. Sam, big thanks to you, mate. You have a rest over the international break. And we will see you all in a week's time for another Championship Check-In podcast.